a distinguished audience here. And I would like to wish all of us a very nice discussion and very nice conclusion of our event. Our event is a little bit painful for Ukraine. I think it is not painful only for Ukraine, it is painful for each and every country that faces a kind of trouble. It can be a war, but it is like that. And to overcome these circumstances, we really need international help. And this is the purpose of our conference, to engage each and every
Recording in progress.
To help Ukraine in the way you need. Sometimes I say, okay, of course, money rules. That's true of our world. You can go to the supermarket and buy some food for your heart and beauty and soul and everything that. But even a good word sometimes makes a great difference, especially to people that are refugees here. And they need sometimes, not sometimes, they always need, but some of them are stronger, some of them are weaker, and all of them, they need psychological support at least. And of course, we're grateful for the European Parliament for granting us temporarily these premises to have. We are happy to welcome you all here in really a center of the European Quarter of Brussels, the heart of the European Quarter. I think it's symbolic. And actually, the name of this place we gather is Station Europe. It was from old times. Now it is not operational. But I think Station Europe is next step for Ukraine. So I have an honor to welcome you all here, and I have an honor to announce the first panelist of our meeting. And the first one will be Ambassador of Ukraine to the European Union, Mr. Vsevolod Chintsov, with program speech on support of this issue, because you need to know that, since February, when we are invaded by Russia, we are supposed to work 24/7. And most of us really work 24/7, except 3-4 hours for sleep. And so this is really amazing. And I would like to pass the floor to my colleague, Mr. Vsevolod Chintsov, representative of Ukraine to the European Union. You don't touch it, you just talk.
Okay. Well, so thank you very much.
That is the option from the technicians. It's
yes.
Not mine.
Yeah, Natalia, she can give orders because she's not only runs this hub, but also our family as my wife. And yeah, thank you indeed for joining us. And yes, we work a lot, but it's not only our mission engaged. It's definitely our colleagues and friends, and many of them are present here, who help to tackle those tremendous challenges which our country is facing and our people are facing. And you, Natalia, mentioned Ukrainians. Yes, there is a colloquial name refugees, but indeed, legally speaking, they're not refugees. They're people under protection here in the European Union. And this is the first point I wanted to emphasize that and really express our gratitude that European Union, the European Commission was really quick, really efficient to fix this status for the Ukrainians. And it's very important, I think, even here among us, there are Ukrainians who benefited from those possibilities, and they can study, they can live, they can work, they can benefit from social protection, health protection. So it's really important. And definitely the first phase, months, 1.5 months, were extremely tense for DG Home and other services, because there was a great influx of Ukrainians, and you had to work on marsh and to understand how to manage the process, how to make sure that people are welcome. And indeed, it was a great cooperation between the member states, which stepped in, which allocated all necessary resources, and definitely you coordinating this big effort. Now, when the system is established, also the system of coordination among European Commission, member states probably, you will touch upon this issue, but what is really important that Ukrainian agencies, Ukrainian ministries, they are also involved, and they work together with member states, and it's not just a kind gesture for you that you have this instruments, you share these instruments with us, but it has really practical meaning, because there is a quick communication, quick coordination, and I understand now we have thematic meetings, so Ukrainian agencies, they can directly inform you based on the information we are getting from the field, getting from different organizations, from the embassies, enabling you to react effectively and efficiently on those challenges, because since you have this great number of people now, and I understand it's 4 or even more, 4 million people hosted here in Europe, and there are always issues to tackle, and also there is a dynamic of the situation, dynamic of the process, because the first phase was basically about to get registered, to find home. Now it is about to also to help Ukrainians, and mainly there are women and kids to find meaningful job, to find school or kindergarten, but also to live normal life. The important issue is that this is a temporary protection, and I want to emphasize that it is important both for you and for us that it is temporary. Yes, it is important to create decent living conditions, if possible, that people upgrade their skills, definitely continue education for kids, but they need to get back home. And that's why we need to keep this constant interaction on the level of our agencies, to make sure that we have this migration as a temporary issue and get them back. And I think also it could lay the ground for further discussion about circular migration, because we try to grasp this issue. I remember from my first tenure in Brussels, but I think that could be also a kind of a pilot project. Now, how to keep this balance, that to not to overstress your infrastructure, your social system, but also to open those possibilities for people who need to come here to work for different reasons now because of war. But it could also set a good good example how to cooperate and to avoid any complications in the society, both in Ukraine and here. So I think I will stop here, and I will be ready also to take part in a discussion. And now I hand over to you, Beata, right? So
I just want to intervene with a couple of remarks. I do apologize, but I need to address each and every speaker of the panel. And just to echo your contribution, and of course, both Belgium, European Union in general, and our families, they do have difficulties here. Because, you know, if you run your own, let's say, house of, I don't know how many square meters with some employed personnel that help you. And now you come here and you propose 700 euros. It is not really the amount that you would be happy to have for your household, because you're used to a little bit more or less. So, but I think that the refugees from Ukraine fleeing from the war should be grateful that they can have safe environment, they can have shelter over their heads, and they have a very nice, regulated, of course I understand that no system is perfect, but a very safe and secure program to register and to have their shelters. And for this, we need to thank you, the European Commission, because only after your notice, everyone on the border was welcome, and welcome here. So we do appreciate your help. And I think everyone need to understand that you do more than you can. And with these words, I would like to introduce to you Madam Beata Gminda. She is the Deputy Director General for Migration and Home Affairs. And she is also the head of the task force leading EU's effort to support people fleeing the war in Ukraine at the European Commission. And before, she had a great experience of around, you know, many years. We don't mention we are women, we don't mention the years. She was really, well, I will not announce it, but it's impressive, really, believe me. I see in biography the Secretary General of the European Ombudsman helping a lot of people to make their fortune in the European Union and beyond. And with this words, and without any delay, I pass the floor to Mrs. Beata Gminda.
Thank you very much for that very warm welcome to both of you. And I'm also very grateful to be able to be here, because you mentioned the word security and safety. I think both of them are extremely important. And this is exactly what was behind our very quick decision to propose to the Council to offer temporary protection to all the Ukrainians fleeing the war. I remember the moment in my office, I was standing around with loads of colleagues, and they all looked at me, yeah, but we have never used that directive. And on top, we have proposed now a Pact for Asylum and Migration to abolish this directive. Can we now use it? And we talked to the commissioner, and she said, yes, of course, and we need to give this feeling of safety and security to people arriving. The commissioner had just been at the border. I had really I could be with her for that, and it was a very moving and touching view to see all the people fleeing, and of course it was very important to give this temporary protection. So the Council followed on that, and it is something that we are now exploring together, because this temporary protection has never been used as law in the European Union. It gives access to a lot of minimum rights in the European Union. You mentioned already very important ones: access to social assistance, access to health, access to labor, access to school. So you are a full member of the society, but of course it gives, in every member state has a different set of rights and a different set of how to put this in motion, because it's very much also linked to the social system of every country. So we have an overview of what the protection means, but then how it is spelled out in detail is done by every member state. But for example, it foresees that kids have to go to school, it foresees that you have to have access to labor, and it also gives you protection for healthcare. This temporary protection is first of all valid for a year, so it will last until the 4th of March 2023. It can then be automatically prolonged twice by 6 months and for another year. So I have more and more people coming to me to say, yeah, but you know, what happens if the war continues and so on. I think it's too early to be scared about that. We will find solutions. At this moment, there will be temporary protection and it is automatically prolongable. Very important for people to know. Important for us, for the more or less 4.5 million who are in the European Union, is also that they register for temporary protection. Every Ukrainian fleeing the war who comes into the EU benefits from it immediately, but it's important to know where you are and in what country you're trying to accommodate yourself until you can go back. So I would plead also in this event that people use the opportunity to register in every country, because it's important for us to see who is in what country. For that reason, we're also building up a registration platform. So we're exchanging now data between the member states. This will go live hopefully in two weeks, to see who is registered in what country, also to avoid that we're registering people 4 or 5 times, because this wouldn't be very correct, and also in terms of numbers. Another important issue is, whilst you are in the European Union, even if you have registered in one country, you can continue to move to another country. Like I can move to another country. But I will have to tell Belgium that I'm leaving Belgium, and I will have to tell Spain, where it is nicer weather than here, that I am now intending to live in Spain. So this obligation is on everyone. But you're not losing your temporary protection by moving from one country to another. And the rules of temporary protection are the same in every EU member state, with very slight modulations. Where are the modulations? They are actually a little bit on the scope, because some member states extend the temporary protection to people who have been with us from Ukraine before 24th of February, some don't, and they find other solutions for these people. This is in the individual legal possibility of every member state. There's also some discussions about people who have not Ukrainian nationality. Under the decision of the Council, it was decided to give temporary protection to everyone who was residing legally and with a residence permit, also if not Ukrainian nationality, in Ukraine before the 24th of February. Otherwise, if people do flee the war and have not had a legal residence before, they can have access to adequate protection, which is similar, but this is a national competence then how to deal with these people. Other very important for us is that people who want to go back to Ukraine, because some areas are no more safer again, and want to look after their family or after their property and then come back, they can do that. They will not lose temporary protection. But what is not lawful is to go back and not tell people that you are not continuing to live in the EU. So that's very important, because we would like, or the social assistance that you receive is linked to being in the European Union and in the country you register. So, but if you want to go back and forth, this is absolutely possible and allowed. I think this is the key messages I wanted to give you. And I'm happy to also pick up on the questions we have. We in the Commission have made a very nice website which answers all these questions. You can give us input and suggestions how to make this website better, how to speak perhaps in more plain language. We're all bureaucrats, so we're never very good in speaking things very concretely, because there could be the one case where this is now not correct what we're saying. So these suggestions are very welcome. We have a joint solidarity platform of all member states under this Temporary Protection Directive, where Ukraine is regularly there as guest. We have a good contact with all ministries in Ukraine. We have, for example, spent quite some time on a superb app you have developed by the Ministry of Digital Transformation that allows every Ukrainian to have all its documents in an app. I don't have that. I find it very fascinating, which is, of course, also very helpful then if you have not managed to come out with your biometric passport, that you can, in the app, show that I have these and these documents. We would like member states to work more actively with this app, but there has to be a demand for that. So the technical possibilities are there, but member states have to jump and say, okay, we use that. So it would be good if Ukrainians would continue to use this app and also start using it at larger numbers than at the moment, because this is a unique opportunity created by the Ministry of Digital Transformation. So we are exploring a lot of practical ways how to go about it, and any suggestions to this end are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beata, and I hope that we will have questions already, and I would just from my personal experience say that your program is working, because I do apologize for this family nuance, but we have now 10 people living in our house except our family. And we're all, no, yes, and we passed all those procedures and they are all working. So thanks a million for granting our people this opportunity. Because it's, of course, no one, well, I hope I don't expect those people to live with me the rest of my life. I hope that war in Ukraine ends. We all pray for this. But the issue is that when we can be of use, we are. And we are grateful for this opportunity to do it not illegally, but legally. And with this word, let me continue, let me pass the floor to our very, very welcome participant, Lucas Geke, Deputy Director General of International Center for Migration Policy Development and Director for Policy Research and Strategy. And since the beginning of Russian invasion, the member states in Eastern and Central Europe have been on the front line of receiving people displaced by war. You know, there is a catastrophe in Poland where the, I do apologize, sanitary system does not really cope with the refugees from Ukraine, because there are more than 2 million. And so the neighboring countries, such as Lithuania, Estonia, they are by buses taking them from the border. And so it's a really, really, really big, very big issue and big deal. And under his guidelines, we have innovative and pragmatic approach to support people of Ukraine from fleeing from the war. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And let me begin with also expressing my gratitude to be here, to be able to join the stage here, address the audience here in the room, but also the many people in front of their screens on this very important topic, of course, that engages so many of us. It was mentioned already that people work day and night to make things work around temporary protection and supporting the Ukrainians fleeing the war. And the stage was already presented. The outlines of temporary protection and the challenges were described. So I will not go into this much deeper. I think also the long-term perspective was already put in place. The ultimate end of whenever that is and under whatever conditions and circumstances this will be, return is the overall objective at the end of this situation when protection is not required. anymore. As mentioned before, also the issue is that it's temporary protection, so it is limited in time, and with it came all the access, very quick access to basically almost all the rights that there are. So also it was said that it was never used before, and I think that's the point. And the organization that I work for since 30 years is working on exactly those topics to support the authorities to make things work on the ground. So if you ask yourself, where are we, ICMPD, in all of this, we try to support the ongoing efforts, both on the EU level as well as supporting Ukrainian authorities with who we entertain close contacts, and I come back to this. Also, the ambassador has underlined this important element, but also work with the receiving countries, the EU frontline countries, who are also our member states, in making things work. And it is known here on the stage, it is known here in the room and on the screens, that also there people work day and night to make temporary protection work concretely on the ground. I just spent 2 days in the Czech Republic, and I'm impressed about the efforts and preparations and support given there. However, and I would like to zoom in now on one particular point which I find very, very important, which helps us to kind of transcend the temporariness of that situation. Find ways to deal with what Beate Geminde has said, the what-if question. We'll deal with that when we get there, but what helps us to make meaningful use of the time is access to labor market. There's many concerns around all the other rights, and I don't want to ignore them, but I want to focus on this point in particular, because it helps, and that is a very, very important element in the present situation, is help to preserve self-sufficiency, self-reliance, and preserve agency among the Ukrainians who have fled the war, who are now here and have to sort of deal with everything that is happening around them. But it was mentioned to also lead, I don't know if decent is the right word, but lead a decently stable life in that transition, in that interim period, and make sense of their presence here in the Union. So it is very, very important that we look at the concrete challenges that hosting countries have in view of making the right to work a reality. And that is a very important element, not only to support Ukrainians, but also to support hosting countries' economy that are burdened. We heard one element of the stress that exists in the hosting countries. But also to prepare for what the ambassador has underlined, an eventual return at some point. So to preserve skills levels that there are, but ideally also adjust the skills level, reskill, upskill for the time when return becomes a possibility, and also to deal with the challenges that Ukraine will face at that point. So I think it is very important to not forget the concept of circular migration and the role that migration can play in an eventual reconstruction of the economy of lives and of Ukraine as a whole when the circumstances permit. So the role of migration and mobility in the reconstruction, I think, is very important. And at the end of my few minutes, perhaps I have time to just highlight some of the initiatives that we are undertaking. But now, just briefly, the situation in the host country labor markets, and that's a positive message, at this point in time is favorable, the situation there. Fairly low unemployment rates create a more conducive situation to enter the labor market. And just a few examples which are remarkable and underline the determination of the Ukrainians in the host countries to work and contribute is the high numbers of people that have found legally a job already. I don't have the very actual figures, but just as an indication, 400,000 of the registered temporary protection beneficiaries in Poland in the working age, 120,000 of them more or less, have already found work legally in Poland. That's every fourth in the working age. That is remarkable and should not be forgotten. At the same time, there's still a high number of people who have not, and I think that's what I would like to add to this debate here. Also, just a footnote, brain waste, as it's called sometimes in migration research, that you work below your level of experience, below your level of skills, might be a coping mechanism in the moment, but in mid and long term, that is not what we want to have. That's not good for the individual. That's not good for the host country economy. So that we need to keep in mind. The Czech labor market also here, a low unemployment rate, and there's a great demand there's a great offer of job, and there's a great demand for workers. Ukrainians, already 50,000 people have found work in the Czech Republic. Again, we are 12 weeks into the conflict, is a remarkable number. I heard when I was there about a survey that was undertaken with employers. 250,000 employers were asked about the possibilities of hiring Ukrainians, and the turnout, the answers that the survey provided was that there's a potential of an additional 60,000 vacancies that are potentially available for Ukrainians in the Czech Republic. So just to highlight those two things, and now the effort really is to make that a reality, and be smart about connecting the now to the future, and think of what mobility and migration can do in terms of, is that too much to say, business in exile, those enterprises whose people are abroad, can they be reconstituted? Can they be supported to maintain their business activity? Can they be supported and prepared for an eventual return, which can create, if we're clever, strong links between the host country and Ukraine, and that is capital that we're building for a time later. But also other ideas that we're seeing. There's a lot of creativity in host countries to cut red tape, to cut the restrictions that most of the EU member states' labor markets have, to allow people to enter the labor market. I just would like to, in ending, highlight some of those concrete challenges which are related, obviously, also to language. Alphabet is a different one, obviously. There's creative solutions around this to not sort of sequence language learning and job take-up, but be creative and allow language skills to be obtained while working. Childcare, we know the ambassador has highlighted the composition of the people fleeing. Childcare is an important element to be looked at in order for the largely well-educated, highly educated female temporary protected people. So this is an important element. Also here we see that many companies are starting now to include childcare in their job offers, and I think that is an important point that needs to be supported as well. We heard about the recognition of skills, a complicated matter in peacetime, so to speak, in the EU, and for years and years we've been talking about it. The Commission is supporting these efforts to make that simpler, to facilitate the skills matching, skills identification of individuals. The Ukrainian authorities are helping that as well. We heard digital solutions for showing that qualifications exist. I, for one, wouldn't know where my diplomas actually are, probably rolled up in the basement. So if I had to leave now, I would not be able to show them wherever I hope to be welcomed like people are. So the digital solutions here are also very important. And the last point I wanted to highlight, and the ambassador has mentioned that, you all know that, but I also heard and seen that the crucial and important role that Ukrainian authorities play in supporting the efforts of hosting countries, the administrations there, consular services, for instance, in providing the documentation. There, indeed, people work more than day and night. If there's a third part of the day, then they work that too. And I hear that also from my colleagues in the host country authorities, that they need that support, they appreciate that support, and they see that we also need to further extend support to those services in order to make temporary protection work all the way. So I would like to emphasize this. I leave it here because I think I've used more than my allotted time, but I hope I'd be able to also.
I haven't interrupted you as I promised yesterday.
Thank you, but I feel I should come to an end, and perhaps in the question and answers I can throw in a few ideas how practically we could support the widening of the bottlenecks and perhaps overcoming of some of the problems I highlighted. Thank you for your patience, and thank you again.
Dear Lucas, we are happy to have you here. That's first. Second, the issues that you have addressed, felt on the skin of each and every fleeing person from Ukraine. Because, of course, it's a temporary solution. And of course, most of those millions, I think it's about 4 million now fleeing from war from Ukraine to the European Union only, would be happy to come home. But I think each and every of them, at least, need to appreciate these opportunities that you're granting. And the opportunities are really nice, because I have already walked to the commune with 3 portions, if I may say so, of people. And they are given documents, they are given social assistance, they are asked whether they need any psychological assistance or something like that. And they are also given some, it's not huge money, well, for whom, how, as we say in Odessa, where I am from. But it is something that allows people not to, as I say, not to steal the bread in the supermarket. And so they are all grateful to the system established. And with this word, if we have a connection to Kiev, because we have also a prominent, thank you so much. We will come back to you during question and answer session. Do we have a connection to Kiev? Yeah, should be. Because I need to have the Mr. Frederick. Is it okay? Do you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we are much grateful to the European Union for bringing back to Kiev its delegation. It's like a mark. And we hope that bringing back the diplomatic establishments means that Kiev is not under danger anymore. It's very important for us. So I'm happy to welcome here the Ambassador Fredrik Wesslow, Swedish diplomat, who is now leading the advanced group of the European Union Assistance Mission to return back into Ukraine in his capacity of Deputy Head of Mission. Mr. Wesslow, please pass our best regards to Kiev you are currently operating from. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me start by thanking the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak. So my name is Fredrik Wesslow, as was mentioned. I'm the deputy head of the European Union Advisory Mission in Ukraine. And so EUAM, as we're called, we are a crisis management mission. We were deployed in 2014 to support Ukrainian law enforcement agencies reform and adopt European EU standards, basically. And we've been in the country since then. We have a staff of 350. We have, or we had 4 field offices in Lviv, Kharkiv, Odessa, and also we had an office in Mariupol, the city of Mariupol, until this was bombed and destroyed together with much of the city. When Russia launched its invasion on the 24th of February, EUAM evacuated. We went to Moldova, and then later on we went to Poland. And we've been operating out of there since the 24th of February. But now recently, this week actually, we started our return to Ukraine, which I'm very pleased about. So I'm speaking from our headquarters in central Kiev. Arrived just a couple of days ago with a team of 15 colleagues, and we intend to build up our international presence throughout the summer. But let me speak a little bit more to the topic of this extremely interesting event. When we evacuated the mission, obviously we couldn't continue our normal activities in promoting reform. But what we main things we did was launch a border crossing support activity. So for the past couple of months, we've been sending teams, international experts, EUAM experts, to the Ukrainian side of the border crossing points, of 12 border crossing points between Ukraine and Poland, Romania, and Ukraine, and Slovakia and Ukraine. So these teams have been operating on the Ukrainian side and helping the flow of refugees out of Ukraine, and also the flow of humanitarian goods and other types of goods into Ukraine. So we've been going there on a daily basis to sort of facilitate these flows. This is done very much in coordination with the delegation, of course, as well as other actors such as Frontex, ECHO, and the EU BAM, Ukraine, Moldova. I think what we've seen as the war has evolved, also there's been a slight shift in focus. You know, I think the flow of people now has actually reversed. So we're seeing more people coming back into Ukraine at the moment rather than leaving, which I think is also quite significant. We have also shifted our focus quite a lot on to facilitating the swift crossing of convoys, in particular humanitarian aid convoys, and also fuel supplies. I think, as you may know, there's a bit of a crisis in Ukraine when it comes to fuel shortage, actually. And also, very recently, this border support activity has also been focusing on the so-called solidarity lanes that are being established now to facilitate Ukraine's agricultural export and also bilateral trade with the European Union. I think an extremely important function these days. What our experts and advisors also have done at the border crossing points is in addition to this facilitation role, is also really look at human trafficking. I mean, with the massive numbers of people leaving Ukraine, especially in the beginning of the war, the risk of human trafficking has, of course, increased quite a bit. So this is something which we've been paying special attention to. And this also really goes to the heart of our sort of normal mandate, which has included helping the State Border Guard Service and also the customs and other actors implement an integrated border management to really improve the efficiency, effectiveness, and interagency coordination on the border crossing points. And of course, secondly, I think it's important to mention here our work in supporting the National Police and other law enforcement agencies in combating organized crime, because as we all know, trafficking in human beings is fundamentally run by organized criminal networks which operate transnationally, of course, as well. Something which I'd really like to highlight, though, is the vulnerability of children in this time of war. And I think it's clear to everybody who's been paying attention that since the start of the war, around 2 million children have left Ukraine. And this, of course, I think raises enormous concern for everybody involved in trying to support Ukraine at this moment. Obviously, children belong to a very vulnerable group, especially are at risk at trafficking, of course. And here, I think we've seen quite a bit of high numbers of unaccompanied minors as well that have moved or are being moved to other countries. So the risk here is also quite significant. But also, I think it's important not to forget that around 2.5 million children are also internally displaced in Ukraine. And even though they haven't crossed the border, they haven't left Ukraine, I mean, this group is also very much a vulnerable group as well. So let me just conclude by underlining that EUEM, that we will continue to support Ukrainian law enforcement agencies, especially now that we're returning to Ukraine. We'll continue to support this border activity to ease the flow of people across the border, both into Ukraine and out of Ukraine, of course. And also we'll continue to strengthen law enforcement agencies in combating human trafficking and also tackling the scourge of transnational organized crime. So with that intervention, let me again thank the organizers and look forward to a continued interesting debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frederick. Thank you very much for fitting the time slot. Thank you. And I pass the floor now to my colleague, Michael.
Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. It's Michael Palmer from DG Home, European Commission. I also wanted to welcome the people following online. Apparently, we have over 100 people connected on Zoom and following the stream on Twitter and YouTube. And I wanted to say, before we open the floor to questions here, that people following online can also put your questions in the Slido app. So the hashtag #StandWithUkraine and Slido, and your questions will appear there. We're already seeing a few coming in, so we'll try and answer as many as possible in the short time available, and but we'll be recording those questions in any case. But I think at this point we open the floor in the room to questions. So there's a microphone circulating, and please go ahead and ask your question.
Good morning.
If you could introduce yourself as well, please.
Yeah, Julia Kulakowska, Ukrainian, mom of 3, wife of military. Beata, Lucas, thank you very much. As a person, as displaced.
Don't cry. I will give you some water. I will give you some coffee and some sweets as well.
Beata, the crossing, perfect. Taking care, getting protection in Belgium, perfect. Everything, schools, crash, perfect. Social security, perfect. Now comes to the point which Lucas raised, not wasting brains, to be self-sufficient, to be useful, to pay taxes, to develop and to get the developed brains and knowledges to be back into Ukraine soon. And like, just a remark, let the European Union Commission or institutions pioneer this. Let high-skilled personnel with a NATO, EU background, with the NGOs, with the European integration background, to integrate, to develop, just consider opening to like third contributing country, your institutions, interim. We are now entering the integration phase for Ukraine. Let us develop our skills and knowledge and bring this expertise back to Ukraine. Thank you.
Michael, I know that my time is over, but I will I can't help mentioning that, for example, in Poland agreed to accept the Ukrainian diplomas, what is Lucas mentioned, just without any kind of big bureaucratic system, postal and all that stuff. And I have a lot of beautiful examples When people come into Poland really highly qualified, they were welcome in the universities of Poland, probably not in Warsaw, but in such as Lodz and this kind of states, they were welcome. So in case this example could be spread, so we really do not have the example when, for example, a lady with a child coming to a rail station is captured by someone introducing itself as a volunteer, taking out her passport, and then she just disappears. Yes, it will be tackled, but I need to make a bridge to the next panel as well. And if you want, I can give the floor to people that would like that are providing help. Would you like to speak? Just, but you have 1 minute.
Yeah.
I need to warn you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Enrique Brim. I'm from Germany. We have got also a foundation, Save Ukraine e.V. And we also help people who are fleeing from Ukraine. From the first day, we support refugees. We were at the 25 February, the first time at the border, Ukrainian-Poland border. And we tried to help private to come people from Ukraine to Germany to Poland and integrate them to organize it. We organized a foundation, get more support, get more volunteers, and did from this a whole project where we're supporting refugees. We are integrating them in the German system. We already have got pilot projects with different hospitals where we start to integrate Ukrainian people in the hospitals. We support their children. They are going to different kindergartens, local. We offering their flats for the people, for the refugees, and we try to integrate them completely in a real life, because without help they can't move on. It's how should I tell it? We should see them like refugees. They are normal people. We must integrate them in our life and give them opportunities to move on. And the pilot projects showed us a lot of things. The biggest issue is the language. The Ukrainian-Russian language is hard to understand in Germany, and a lot of Ukrainian people don't know English. That's why we want to open an academy where we integrate language, the German language, the English language, and support this, support the refugees with learning stuff, learning materials, and prepare them for their working place. And for example, the hospitals give us the curricula, they give us help to organize this academy, this help for the refugees, and yes, we should use these opportunities and help them local and give them a new future and support them.
Give us your contact details. We will spread it on our web pages so the people in Germany know how to address you. And I need to praise the Belgian authorities who really provide health care. And when you see the social worker first time after registration in the commune, he or she is advising you to go to the Dutch or French courses. And with this sincere gratitude, I pass the floor to Michael.
Well, I was going to just pass back to Beata, but before you answer that question, also coming in online, we also received a question for you. Why are non-Ukrainian people who do not have long-term permits out of the directive, which is an interesting question, and also about temporary protection. Do you have to register in order to get it? And what happens to those unregistered staying more than 90 days? But we'll address those on the website as well.
Yeah. No, but to come back, I think I really plead, please register, yes. because it's important that you have told us that you're there and that the rights to the access to the rights is immediate when you enter the European Union. So the registration for having access to the rights is not necessary. But to administer you and to know who you are and to offer you, access to all these rights, it's very important to have a registration taking place. And thanks for sharing your story. I have to say, in the last situation like this, in 2015-16, when we had the Syrian War and lots of people coming to the EU, my family hosted also 2 people, those 2 men from Syria, and it's a two-way story. There's the offer of what you can provide, but there's also the necessity and willingness to engage with it. From these 2 men, both are still in Germany. One is fully integrated and speaks German like I do, and the other one has still difficulties, while his children are all fully integrated. So it's very important to quickly integrate into the language, but at the same time here we have a completely different situation. We also have a situation where there is possibilities to go back, where it's not yet clear. So for us, the temporary protection has been the right measure in this situation. It is a different situation than 2015 and 16. And definitely, if we were to come to this, at this stage, hypothetical situation of 3 years being over, of course there will be a solution found, a legal solution found, and of course people that want to integrate and find labor and get a permit based on their labor employment, then they can also stay in the European Union, like many Ukrainians have been in the European Union before. So. Yes, and one last plea from me is, you have noticed it already and mentioned it, Natalia, that many people are staying in Poland. Indeed, from the 4 million, out of which 2.8 are registered and the others are not registered, so it's also not really clear if they're still in the European Union. Most of them are in Poland, and it is a very heavy charge on the Polish society and system. We have to be clear about that. So I have always been pleading the rights and the possibilities are also there in other member states. Use the opportunity to also move further away. Labor markets are open in all European countries, and the possibility to return, you can from anywhere in the European Union, be it from the Atlantic coast in Portugal or be it from Cesto in Poland.
Thanks, Beata. We also received a question from Mr. Gurk. Who basically, how can organizations such as ICMPD support Ukrainian institutions to manage migration from and to Ukraine in this time of war?
Yeah, thanks for this question, as this allows me to go back to what I had intended to say. But perhaps before I do, I would like to just join and echo the importance of the registration for, not for having the rights legally, but to be able to apply them and concretely do all the things that we have outlined. So I think that is a key enabler and just a small step to support the system, if you will. 2 aspects. I also want to pick up what has been mentioned here in the room. 2 ways that we are trying to do our part in the present situation. One is on the inside. We are looking into creating hubs for skills, jobs, and entrepreneurship. To support ongoing national, regional, local efforts to help the process of identifying skills, make use of the tools that exist to facilitate that process, to identify concrete job opportunities. I mentioned a few numbers before, but this will not go automatic. So it needs facilitation from the Ukrainian to the job, and what we want to do is to support that process through reskilling, upskilling, working with all the good examples that are out there, and the official efforts or the public efforts to do so. Identify skills, identify areas for skills building. Get the private sector more actively into it, express exactly what they need, exactly also identify challenges, and we try to apply all the good examples that are out there to cut through some of the bureaucratic hurdles there. And I think that's an important point. We try to create incentives as well to perhaps take that step, you know, if my situation is very crowded and very uncomfortable, to move a few hundred kilometers where my situation, my individual situation is better. I have a better perspective for either get into a program for upskilling or have a concrete offer for a job or for childcare, that I would make these few hundred kilometers, as Beat Geminda has said. This adds 3-4 hours to your trip if you want to return. So that helps also a bit in the longer term to make this situation work for everybody. Now coming to the other side, working with our Ukrainian counterparts and friends in this, we have been doing so for the last 20 years, and we have been able to repurpose the activities that we had early on in the conflict. We've been able to provide material support in the as of the early days. We've been able to bring that into the Ukraine, but more specifically looking at the challenges that have been outlined here, the ones that I've referred to. We continue to work with State Migration Service, State Border Guard, State Customs, but also Ministry of Foreign Affairs, consular services. So there is a lot ongoing from our side to ensure that the cooperation between the authorities can work, and that the needs of the our Ukrainian counterparts are known. Today in the afternoon, for instance, we have our member states together with the head of the State Migration Service exactly for that purpose, so that the concrete needs of today can be exchanged, can be expressed, and so that we can support the efforts in providing for those needs. So this is just a short example of what we're doing.
If I may just compliment you, Lucas, having said all this and pleading for this, because 4 million is a lot. In 2000, the Czech Republic, they're doing an amazing job to welcome all these people. Romania, Hungary, everyone. I can name just, everyone. So I really want to value and also, appreciate that.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but we agreed that I am now the bad policeman and Michael is a good one. So with your permission, I would like to assure our online questioners that each and every question will be answered, because we forward them with your permission to you. And you will also answer them online. And I do appreciate your presence here, your time and your patience to Ukraine. And if you don't mind, all of you, if I need your consideration, we have 5-minute break. But 5-minute break means 5-minute break, because I am a bad policeman. Thank you so much.
Let's aim for 2 minutes. we're going to get started. So yeah, come and join. Please take your seats. All right, let's start this second session, focusing on trafficking in human beings, prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnership. So yeah, just the last few people could settle down. Thank you. So first of all, we have a distinguished panel. We have, the clock is ticking, so we'll try and keep things moving. Our first speaker, we're honored to have Mary Akopian, Deputy Minister of Interior of Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us. You should be able to see you on the screen shortly, I believe. Ms. Akopian was appointed Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs for European Integration in 2021. She represents the Ministry in relations with EU institutions and other international organizations, and she's identified priority areas of work to attract international financial and technical assistance from the EU, coordinating that work and also coordinating the work in the fight against human trafficking. So please, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you, participants, Ambassador, and all of participants who is there, and I'm not seeing you right now. It's a great honor to be here today. It's a great chance to share our concerns and our appreciation for all parties who is supporting right now Ukraine. I would like to start with the statement that Russian aggression, which continues for the third month, undermines the whole democratic values and principles of international law. According to the European Convention on Human Rights and other international instruments, the right to life is its fundamental right and value for which we continuously fighting. So today I would highlight the EU solidarity with the Ukraine is of key importance, as Ukraine does not only defend its territorial integrity and the rights of self-determination, but also the defense Europe and basic democratic principles. We are grateful for EU important decision to give immediately residency right in the EU to Ukrainians flowing to Europe. Temporary protection directive allows to grant for at least 1 year temporary protection in all EU member states, including residence permit, access to education and labor market, medicine, etc. Frederick mentioned before the border management issue, which as well was immediately and quickly react and negotiate with EU side, and we managed all that crisis which we had the first days of the war, the all checkpoints between Ukraine and EU. Organized crime issues, which was as well above mentioned, one of the topics which we are precisely right now following and continuously work with our partners, law enforcement in the EU member states. Talking about the flows and the refugees and temporary displaced people, which as well was mentioned that we have a huge number of internally displaced people as well as externally displaced people. According to the latest data, more than 6,200,000 people of Ukrainians were fleeing the war, and more than 5 million people were moved to the EU countries. The largest number of people moved to the Poland, and at least half of them are staying there. We have an incredible number of Ukrainians who are staying at Czech Republic, for example. More than 300,000 people is there, which comparably to the local population, it's 3% of the whole population of Czech Republic. So More than 1.2 million Ukrainian citizens have already registered for temporary protection in EU member states, and we appreciate all the efforts which taken by the EU and the local authorities for having them and receiving them. And we all the time in touch, Minister Monastyrsky all the time in touch with his colleagues, ministers of EU countries, and we carefully following all procedures, all issues which we have with these processes right now. Today, there is one of the biggest risks which we are following, which we are taking care about. This is the human trafficking risks, and citizens of Ukraine who were forced to leave the countries because of the full-scale Russian invasion face the risk of human trafficking. First of all, there is higher risk of involvement in criminal activities and labor exploration. Another vulnerable category which we are very carefully following, this is the children, Ukrainians who have temporarily left or moved abroad there, and they may be trafficked or begging or adoption for profit. Since February 24 this year, the National Police received more than 300 reports on disappearance of children. The majority of them, 88%, were searched by police in hot pursuit. As a result of monitoring media, social networks, different open source, almost 2,000 reports of lost contact or missing with children are revealed. Most of these reports came from Mariupol, Donetsk Oblast, Irpin and Bucha, which is Kiev region. In order to prevent such situation and establish close international law enforcement cooperation, we considered possibility to send the officers, Ukrainian officers of the national police, to be relocated diplomatic and consular missions in the countries which the largest number of Ukrainians. Currently, jointly with the law enforcement agencies of Great Britain, Spain, Poland, we work over the possibility to send representative of police in order to establish contacts with local authorities, visit places of residence of Ukrainian citizens fleeing the war, preventing the possible involvement of our citizens to human trafficking and other crimes. In order to prevent human trafficking, the Migration Police of Ukraine, jointly with the OSCE Anti-Trafficking Coordination and the international organization A21 Ukraine, are conducting an awareness-raising campaign among the citizens traveling abroad, especially in the regions close to the state border, like Lviv, Chernivtsi, Zakarpattia, etc. Police are distributing leaflets to citizens at border checkpoints and train stations with the information materials, contact telephone numbers of hotlines in Ukraine and abroad for different type of consultations. What kind of measures have been taken for this moment on the national level? We create situation center, which was set up by Migration Police Department with the involvement of regional units, which operates 24/7. Coordination headquarters to protect the rights of children under marital law has been established, and the Migration Police is the member, jointly with the National Social Services, Ministry of Social Policy and General Prosecutor Office. The Telegram Messenger was created, so-called Stay Safe chatbot, through which citizens can learn about the risk of human trafficking, rule of safe employment, contacts of institutions providing assistance in Ukraine and abroad, forms of human trafficking and norms of legislation. In cooperation with the cyber police and mobile operators in Ukraine, SMS mailing was organized to citizens who are traveling abroad with emergency contacts of services, IOM offices and diplomatic missions of Ukraine. So the key tool to prevent, detect and investigate human trafficking in close cooperation with the quick exchange of information, we see the platforms of Europol and Interpol. In this context, I would like to know that the Migration Police of Ukraine, under the auspice of Europol, are creating the international information platform to prevent human trafficking among Ukrainian refugees. The project has already been launched jointly with the law enforcement agencies from different EU countries like Austria, Bulgaria, Spain, Germany, Poland, Slovakia, and others. We are talking about the creating 24/7 information communication platform on Europol basis and conducting joint inspections of possible facts of human trafficking. The aim of the project is to prevent human trafficking, joint prompt response to reports of facts, and full cooperation in identifying victims of trafficking. As I say, all these measures we as well developed on bilaterally with each EU member state, as well as joint platforms like Europol. During the International Roundtable on the Prevention of Trafficking in Human Beings, which took place April 5th, more than 660 law enforcement officials from 28 as well as NGOs from Ukraine which take part in this, discussed the risk of human trafficking and discussed the joint possible measures and efforts which could be done jointly. Today, the international law enforcement cooperation is of key importance. We have already established operational communication with, as I said, Europol and member states through Globekeeper Messenger for coordination actions in case of discovery of facts of human trafficking. Information was sent to Interpol regarding persons who were brought to criminal responsibility in Ukraine for committing crime under the articles of trafficking of human beings and pimping. Good possibility for managing migration flows if cooperation through the European Migration Network. And we are happy to receive the letter by the European Commission, Ylva Johansson, confirming our acceptance as an observer in the European Migration Network. In view of the situation, we propose to foster cooperation on bilateral basis, as well as through different tools and mechanisms like Frontex, European Migration Network, Interpol, Europol, in particular within the establishing international information platform, as well to establish 24/7 exchange of information about missing persons or unaccompanied children who is traveling abroad, to continue operational police cooperation, and all these measures under the very high let's say attention of our ministry, our law enforcement agencies, and additionally to this, all these points, we on daily basis serving on our daily duties. I mean that police is hardworking to prevent all different crimes as well inside the country. So that's why I would as well react and coming back to the message which was already mentioned today, that combating the organized crime continue to be important point which we are working on daily basis. And during this active war period, we have actually deported a few persons who is dealing and leading the organized crime. And as you know, that the most of these persons is under the protection of Russian Federation and under the promotion of the Russian Federation. So that's why all these efforts and measures will help us to stabilize situation, to be in touch with each party who is dealing with the Ukrainians, who is temporarily in the EU countries, and we should jointly make efforts to protect them, protect all the vulnerable categories, and to ensure their rights, their freedoms, and their self and security in the EU territories, and force them, and as soon as we can develop the possibility to return to their native place and cities. Thank you so much. Thank you for attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Akopian, for this very valuable and insightful presentation. And without further ado, because the clock is ticking, I would like to hand the floor to Diane Schmidt. Diane is the EU Anti-Trafficking Coordinator since 2021, and as such has been responsible for the development and implementation of the new anti-trafficking plan to protect people fleeing the war in Ukraine. Please, Diane.
Thank you very much, Mike. I would like to start by thanking the ambassador and also the Vice Minister, Mary Akopian, for the excellent cooperation we had since the beginning in order to prevent trafficking human beings from happening. I invited the Vice Minister to the meeting of the national rapporteurs and coordinators of the 27 member states in order to discuss the risks and also to discuss possible measures to be taken since the beginning in order to prevent trafficking, but also to address and try to stop possible criminals. It was extremely urgent to act. Why was it so urgent to act? Because already before the aggression in the European Union, Ukrainians were among the top victims of trafficking in human beings. It was also urgent because this means that there are criminal networks here outside in the European Union, probably looking for having new victims in order to exploit them either sexually or through labor exploitation, begging, or other means. It is also important to underline that the majority of victims of trafficking in human beings in the European Union are women and girls, and obviously you know that those who arrived are mainly women and children. So the cooperation we had since the beginning with the different authorities in the member states, with Ukraine, with civil society organizations, and especially also with our agencies, Europol, Eurojust, the Asylum Agency, now also the European Labour Authority, but also with other international organizations was key. And I think this cooperation at the end led to the common anti-trafficking plan, and I underline is a common work which I coordinated and which was presented on the 11th of May, which includes all the actions which are already ongoing, and Vice Minister just mentioned some of them in relation to the cooperation, for example, with Europol, and my colleague from Europol will also go a little bit more into the details of this. So the plan is not something completely new. There things happened already immediately after the 24th of February. But on top of that, the plan also underlines where more efforts are needed. And so there are 5 points which are the important points in the context of the fight against trafficking in human beings. But perhaps first let me say that everything which is being done in order to protect those who arrive, including through temporary protection, access to employment, access to health, and so on, obviously reduces the vulnerabilities and also reduces the risk of falling into the hand of traffickers. So coming to the 5 points of the common plan, the first, which is extremely important, is awareness raising on the risk of trafficking. Member states have been very quickly active, and also civil society organization, and in general I would like to underline how important the role of civil society organization is in this context. By producing leaflets, by producing information offline, but also by producing information online through social media, in transport hubs, at the borders, in registration centers, in order to inform those who arrive that they should be careful. There's a lot of the wars, and there's still a lot of solidarity out there, but among those providing solidarity, sometimes there are people who have less good intentions. And so also at European Union level, Beate Gminde also mentioned it just before, there is a central website which was put in place by the European Commission. And in this website, there's also one page which explains the risk of falling into the hands of traffickers, and which includes also some tips on what to do in order to avoid this. Something else also which is important is that potential victims have the possibility to call. They must know who to call or where to go if something happens. And so different helplines are available in member states, either managed directly centrally by the authorities or by civil society organization working with the authorities. And what we have done, this is also an action of the plan, but at the end we have done it very quickly. We have put together all the helplines in the different member states, which are also now available on the website, and so there's an easier access. It is clear that member states have also to ensure, and that's one of the recommendations, that the helplines are accessible 7 days, 24 hours, and that they're also available in different languages, including Ukrainian and Russian, if possible. Of course, all this awareness raising has to continue also in future on the risk. It was focused first in the frontline member states, then people of course move, and I think now we have mainly also to focus on the risk of labor exploitation, which might happen. It was mentioned in the first panel. Not everyone finds immediately a job, so it might be attractive perhaps to reply to interesting offers which are online or which are coming up like this. It's always better to check before accepting something which has not come from official companies or from the authorities or through the authorities, to check really who is behind this before accepting something. So the second point, obviously there are also other preventive measures which are important, and this is the second point of the plan. For example, we recommend to member states that they register those who propose accommodation, transport. Again, as I said, the majority of people come with good intention. But there are again some who try to exploit, so it's important to keep trace also in relation of those who provide accommodation and perhaps also transport, and also to do some checks afterwards. In terms also of prevention, the private sector has a very important role to play. Especially in relation to labor. The private sector has to be aware that there are risks of exploitation, and especially in high-risk sectors. We know already in the European Union, which is agriculture, domestic work, construction. So the private sector can also help here to raise awareness and to work with the different authorities in order to avoid that trafficking is happening, and also to detect trafficking. I'm invited this afternoon by the platform on undeclared work, which is a platform handled and a meeting organized by the European labor authorities about undeclared work. So per se, it's not trafficking human beings, but the fact that you have there in this meeting also representatives from labor inspectorates, you have the social partners there. I think it's also an opportunity I have this afternoon to raise awareness about the risk of trafficking, and also that at national level this is taken seriously. That if labor inspectors are going in companies, that they can also detect signs of possible victims of trafficking, report this to the competent authorities in order that the victims have received the necessary support. When we speak about private sector, I must say that online companies, digital companies, have a very big role to play. Because already with COVID, a lot of the recruitment, exploitation moved online. And obviously also the online dimension is very important for us to raise awareness through social media, but also for the companies to help to detect possible exploitation or recruitment which is happening online. I had a first meeting with different companies on the 5th of May. It's only a start. A lot has still to happen, and I think we have all to work more closely with the companies. The third point of the plan is linked to the cooperation with law enforcement and judicial authorities. The Deputy Minister of Interior just mentioned also how important this cooperation is. I know there are civil society organizations also following this event, and I would like to underline also how important it is when there are suspicious cases or when there are cases that this is reported to the police. I also underline when I have meetings with law enforcement authorities and with national authorities that it is extremely important to report cases and investigations which are ongoing or the outcome of the investigation to Europol. Because more we know about the cases, more we know what's the threat. We can do an assessment, and this is Europol doing the assessment. But we at political level also can adapt the measures in order to avoid that the trend continues or that the network continues to be active. So there are several operations which can be done at European level with the involvement of Europol, Eurojust, which have been done in the past. This week there was a big operation which led to the identification of criminals in UK and in Romania, and to the identification of victims. We have this kind of operation, we have refocused a little bit more to focus on the specific situation now created with all these people, or Ukrainians and others coming from Ukraine, and also, as the Vice Minister already mentioned, cooperation also between Ukraine and Europol and Eurojust, as well as bilaterally with member states on ongoing investigation is extremely key. The fourth point, very quickly, is the early identification of victims. Practitioners, all those who come in contact with people fleeing, need to have training in order to be able also to identify victims. And then obviously, or potential victims, and then obviously comes in immediately the protection. The protection, there are obligations in relation to protection, which are foreseen already now in our EU legislation, in the Anti-Trafficking Directive, and this comes in immediately. So also in the member states, you have referral mechanism, normally well functioning, and they also, we recommend to member states to ensure that this mechanism are functioning so that victims are immediately referred for assistance to the competent authorities. So I think I will stop here only to underline, obviously, that the anti-trafficking plan has much more measures. I will not go through everything. There's a lot which is going on. We continue to cooperate and to coordinate with the different agencies, with our member states. I I had another meeting, with the civil society platform, the EU civil society platform yesterday, where Ukraine was also discussed, among others, but we had also other points, obviously. And I had a meeting, also a joint meeting, first a meeting with the national rapporteurs of the member states, and then a joint meeting between the national rapporteurs and the civil society organizations. So really we all work together, and we have also to continue to work with Ukraine and also with Moldova in the context of the current situation. There are several serious investigations going on in the member states. Europol might come back to this. There's one serious case which is confirmed in Spain in relation to a Ukrainian man who exploited 2 girls. So he has been arrested and he's being prosecuted, but there are other serious cases under investigation. And I think the best is always prevention, to avoid that something is happening, which means informing people, but also be organized from a law enforcement point of view so that potential criminals can be immediately stopped, so that, the crime is not even happening, if possible. But we have also to take into account that trafficking is not necessarily a visible crime, which is immediately detectable. So victims do not always speak out. And also, again, if there are people who do not find immediately a job, who have to take care of their children, who need money, something can happen in the next weeks, in the next months. So, which means we have to continue to be extremely careful, continue to monitor, and be vigilant. So, you can count on me to support our common fight against trafficking in human beings. It's a joint effort. It's a joint effort also with the civil society organizations, and I'm at your disposal for further questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much to Diane Schmidt for setting out the clear and impressive amount of work going on all this. We'll have to say, my fellow cop, we may have to police a little bit the timing of the next three speakers, given that we have about 20 minutes or so, I believe. So if I could ask to give the floor now to Katerina Cherepeka, the president of La Strada Ukraine. That's a public human rights organization working to ensure gender equality and fighting against trafficking in human beings. Please, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this event and to be here, to be able to thank for the solidarity for the EU member countries, for all neighboring countries for their tremendous support and solidarity for Ukraine and for Ukrainian people who had to flee from the war and who were hosted, received, and assisted in their respective countries. In my presentation, I would like to focus on some specific aspects in the situation in Ukraine, in respect of course, in respect of the war, in respect of the increasing the risk of human trafficking. Of course, during the wartime, all the problems, all the challenges, they become more intensified and they become harder to be addressed. And of course, with the war, during the war, the risk of gender-based violence increases, the risk of human trafficking increases. And unfortunately, as it often happens that during the wartime, women and children become more vulnerable comparing to others. If we speak about specifically about the human trafficking, we do see this risk increasing. We also do see the increasing of the risk of vulnerability of children, especially unaccompanied children. Children and young people are vulnerable for exploitation of violence, both in online or offline format. We do see the risks of cross-border trafficking and exploitation. And as you might know, that the majority of the population of people who had to flee from Ukraine. More than 90% of them are women and children. And of course, we understand that regardless or in spite of the support that was provided and is provided by the receiving countries, the risks are still there. We understand that people who are fleeing from Ukraine, they often left everything. Very often they have their houses destroyed, they do not have their document, they might not have their, like a personal belongings, money, they literally can have no place to return. And of course, being extremely traumatized by the current situation, being extremely traumatized and stressed, it's very difficult to expect from them like a critical estimation of any proposals or suggestion that they might receive, like a suggestion to work somewhere, or sometimes some suggestion with some kind of doubtful accommodation options. And of course, we also understand that the risks of the risk and vulnerability may really increase with time. Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine continues. And unfortunately, those savings, possible finances, which people could have with them, or were able to receive from Ukraine, they might be already exhausted, and they definitely will need to go on to provide themselves, despite the a really coordinated, organized assistance during the crossing the border, immediately after the crossing the border, despite of the volunteer support, information, care, and assistance, including like a short-term accommodation provided by the receiving countries, neighboring countries, that is extremely important and valuable. Still, in weeks, in months, probably, the people they have to move on. They have to find more stable accommodation. They have to find some placement for their children if they have the children. They have to find some access to labor market, and of course, these can be the period and the situation when they might be approached by traffickers, by some criminal groups that would suggest them to to find a better option somewhere deeper in the country, or to move to another country where there is no, or let's say there is less information available, or there are less organized support, or there are less options for coordinated volunteer resources for Ukrainian refugees. And of course, these are the area where the risks exist. There are also the risk of internal trafficking and exploitation within Ukraine, of course, also increasing. If we look back at the times previous to the war, before the war, the amount of internal cases of human trafficking was also significant. And again, because at this moment we have more than 10 million, according to the estimation, there are more than 10 people who are displaced. Some, again, many of them do not have place to return. They do not have houses anymore. They lost their jobs, and they might be extremely vulnerable to human trafficking and exploitation within the Ukraine, and even later on, they can also end up in the exploitation situation in other countries.
Thanks so much, Ms. Chopra. If we could just ask you to wrap up in a couple of minutes, please, because we need to move on with the other speakers. Thanks so much. Please go ahead.
Okay, so some other points, important points. Speaking about the statistic, I think this is something that should be really like a monitor, because at this moment, from what we know, from what our colleagues from other countries, from organizations working in Ukraine in the area of human trafficking prevention, there are not that many confirmed cases of human trafficking, but at the same time, all are indicating the real big risks of ending up. And it is very important to continue to monitor the situation, to monitor the flows, to monitor the types of exploitation. There are very big, let's say, very big area where it's really like staying in the dark. This is the risks of trafficking, exploitation, and violence of Ukrainians who were forcibly deported from Ukraine to the non-controlled territories or to the Russia. And at this moment, it's extremely, or let's say it's impossible, almost impossible to verify what is going on there, what kind of exploitation or risk of human trafficking they experience. We understand that there can be various types and maybe new types or developing types and forms of exploitation, including involvement in the illegal activities connected or related to the wartime. That can be used in begging, using for organs removal, and for for many other purposes. But I would like to understand that I would like to underline that this area is really really in the dark, and we do need assistance of the international institutions, human rights international institutions, to monitor the situation and to be able to assist the people. I would also like to mention just a few things that's from our experience and from our perspectives, the human rights organizations, civil society organizations, that is really needed. That is really ensuring and continuation of ensuring the access to the labor market, because all our Ukrainian people who flee in the war, I mean, there are a very big amount of them are professionals, and they can definitely contribute to the economy and to development of the receiving countries. But at the same time, they would be able to contribute to themselves and contribute to Ukraine as well. There is also, we understand and we see the big need in support of existing national organizations, services, and networks providing assistance and providing activities, anti-trafficking activities. It is very important to use all those professionals, expertise organization, their networks, their build connections and referral mechanism and services, and because they are professionals and they would be able to provide the assistance needed, but of course they also need the support.
Thank you so much, Mr. Apoka. We'll have to actually put a stop to this intervention. I'm so sorry to cut you short. It's been so super useful. We will share the link to Lestrada Ukraine in the Slido, but sorry to cut you short because we still have two speakers. I think if it's okay for everyone, we might wrap up the session at 12:40, so extend a couple of minutes.
Okay.
So we have time for questions. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'm sorry to cut you short like that, but I want to leave time for Mr. Rahav. So Rafael Rahav is the former head of intelligence and interrogation at Shabak in Israel. So he has lots of experience in fighting organized crime, terrorism, national crime, and also migration, illegal migration and human trafficking. So please, you have the floor. If you could keep your intervention to 5 minutes, we would be very grateful. Thanks.
Okay, dear members of the board and Your Honor the Ambassador, I'm honored to be elected as the Director for Security and share my long experience in the field of security, investigations, and intelligence. And I would like to start and say that we are starting from zero and quite late, because the war started 3 months ago, and already more than 4 or 5 million refugees passed borders. So we are quite late to start with this work, but I know that work was done until now, and this has to be enforced and continued. When you start a new security mission, you start with a security survey in which you try to locate the threats and the risks that you face in the mission. And this is what we intend to do as a first stage, is to interview all relevant people that appeared here and interview them deeply in order to understand the risks and the threats that they understand they are facing during the work in the fund and above the fund. The second thing is cooperation. And cooperation is a very large word, but it is very hard to achieve. I can tell you that from my experience in the past, cooperation between security agencies was very dull. And the security agencies didn't want to share their information with others and thought that everyone from outside is trying to stand on their toes and disturb them. And only recently, in the last years, after big terror accidents happened, they understood that the cooperation between the agency can only benefit and solve problems. And I can tell you, for example, in the United States, the September 11 case happened. All the information was there before, but lack of communication between the agencies, the FBI, the CIA, and others, caused it to happen. And more than that, we, as a private company, years before, warned the FAA, the American Aviation Authority, that they are risking their inner flights, but by leaving the doors of the cockpit open during the flights. And they could close the doors and enforce them with a cost of about $2,000 per door. They are investing today in aviation security since September 11, billions of dollars for protection that they could save if they would have done it. More than that, the 4 airplanes that were kidnapped during this case were kidnapped by Japanese knives that cost $1. This was when the door of the cockpits were open, and they forced the pilot to either fly the aircraft to the buildings, or they flew it by themselves by using the terrorists. So in order to protect your threats, you have to build a strong system which can be built if you use the stages that has to be your path during this setup. So cooperation with the law enforcement agency is essential, and for that we need the help of the ambassador and others in order to meet those agencies in Ukraine if needed. We don't fear to go to Kiev or wherever to meet the right people and to discuss it with them and to convince them that the cooperation is needed in order to succeed. And the same deals with European community factors and the factors in the different countries that are relevant to our cases of human trafficking and other cases. The third thing is building a database that will include all information collected, and we have the knowledge to build such database with the help of the company that is signed today on an agreement with the fund, which is called Focus, and they have the experience and people that can do it. And in order to build such database, we need also to work in the intelligence field, which means to have operatives that will recruit sources that can supply information about the cases that we are dealing with. And we think that we have, even here, the manpower that can do it, because we have in our country at least people that speak the language, Russian and Ukrainian, and can do the work of recruitment of sources that can supply us with information. We will need to spread our efforts in the different countries, in the crossing points at the borders, and in Ukraine itself, in order to achieve the information, because if you have the information, you can prevent the appearances of trafficking or any other crime. There is no difference between human trafficking or narcotic gangs or any other mafia who deals with extortion. They all use clandestine modus operandi, and you have to fight it by getting the information in order to supply it to the law enforcement powers in order to enforce the law by arresting and interrogating the people. Interrogation is also a very important part in this case, because if you interrogate a trafficker of human trafficker and you get the information for him, it is like recruiting a source inside a cell, because he is an insider and can spread information that is eventually very important for us in order to widen our database and continue. So I don't promise that we can prevent all traffic, human trafficking in the world, but the aim must be, if I give an example of a net that is trying to catch fish, we are trying to narrow the holes of the net in order that at least the big fish will be caught and only the small fish can go through the holes that are left. So it's the time to start working and working hard in order to achieve results, and I hope to get the cooperation of the people who were present here in order to succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hav. Very good intervention. Thank you so much. We still have one speaker left, and I think it's an appropriate way to finish this debate. So I'd like to give the floor immediately at the European Migrant Smuggling Centre at Europol. Please go ahead, take the floor, and then we'll have time for maybe perhaps one question afterwards, and then we'll go and take shelter from the rain.
Thank you very much. Let me just try to share the screen, if you can enable it from your side, because it said it's been disabled by the host. I think it's working now. Yeah, can you confirm that you can see the screen?
Yes, we do.
Thank you once again for the invitation, for giving me the opportunity to speak in this important panel. I will try to really speed it up, to it to be under the time frame. As being said in the introduction, my name is Nenad. I am representing Europol, or to be more specific, I am representing a team that has, considering everything that's happening at this moment in the current situation, very symbolic and I would say very optimistic name, Analysis Project Phoenix, or AP Phoenix. An AP Phoenix is a team that's compiled of specialists and analysts and dedicated to combat and prevent trafficking in human beings operational and strategic level here in Europol. So, from the beginning, the invasion initiated by Russia against Ukraine has caused a humanitarian crisis and triggered, of course, a large number of refugees, more than 6 million people who flee from Ukraine to EU. And we all know that the martial law in Ukraine prohibits men between 18 and 60 to leave the country. So leaving women and children and generally vulnerable persons, being the one who are fleeing the country. They are actually fitting perfectly into the profile of potential THP victims. And I can assure the criminal networks and the criminals involved in trafficking human beings will try to exploit this opportunity for them. If you take into consideration that UNICEF also reported that about 2 million children have left Ukraine amidst the war, with an additional 2.5 million children being displaced in the country, the threat is even more serious. What I do know is that law enforcement agencies in the EU and partner countries, together with the international agencies and different civil society organizations, are united in endeavors to protect the children and unaccompanied minors fleeing from horrors of war, since they are in particular risk, not only when moving across the border, but also reaching the destination. Assessment is that the victims of the THB may be exploited as part of sexual exploitation, labor exploitation, illegal surrogacy programs, forced begging, forced criminality, but also other forms of exploitations. From the very beginning of the Russian invasion, Europol has been focused on monitoring available information and intelligence in order to assess what could be the impact of this war on serious and organized crime and terrorism in the EU. Of course, preventive activities are must. Targeting of the refugees fleeing Ukraine by criminals involved in trafficking human beings has been assessed as a key crime threat emerging from the war in Ukraine. Early warning notification has been issued to inform not only law enforcement agencies, but also the general population. What will be the future in a short-term period, mid-term period, and long-term period? It's hard to assess. What we are doing constantly is monitoring situation, using all the agency expertise and capabilities, including staff who are deployed and participating in fact-finding missions in the region. We continue to deliver the operational support and also stand as a platform for cooperation and information sharing among law enforcement in the relevant EU member states and non-EU partners. To prevent and combat the risk, that we are doing a lot. We conduct a series of actions, such as continuously monitoring Siena information that are coming to us. Information that is shared with Europol with a view to identify trafficking human being cases and also to protect potential victims. Task management group has been formed in the early phase of the crisis, and members of these task management groups are the frontline member states, but together with Ukraine and Moldova. Aim of the task management group is to discuss operational matters, but also to exchange recent issues in relation to the war in Ukraine. It's not only for those countries, it's also open for other member states, other partners, other international agencies who will help us to fight and prevent, which is the most important goal, trafficking in human beings. As mentioned earlier, early warning notification was issued, not to inform only law enforcement, but the general public also. Cooperation with the EU and international agencies, in particular with Europol, Eurojust, European Labour Authority, Frontex, Interpol, UNICEF, and all the others is essential. Multidisciplinary, multi-agency approach of enforcement actions enabling the efficient detection, reporting, and fight against trafficking in human beings for all forms of exploitation is actually key to success. Therefore, we also activated the Impact, or European Multidisciplinary Platform Against Criminal Threat, which is a strategic platform with all the member states and other partners joining together, trying to identify the high threats, risk, and what is even more important, the most appropriate response. We have organized extended roundtable discussions on prevention and connection THB. And we have included in this discussion not only law enforcement from the member states and other agencies, but also relevant non-government organizations. That was done under the umbrella of Impact, which I mentioned just a moment ago. And the aim was to enhance the cooperation between agencies, law enforcement authorities, and also the non-government organizations. We need to strengthen information sharing. We need to have clearer view how to identify trafficking in human being cases and how to be more effective in protecting the victims. A lot has been said about raising awareness. What is, from our perspective, very important, and I think that a lot has been done, is that it's important to be present in physical and in virtual environment at the same time. Namely, traffickers are continuously being reported to exploit benefits of the modern technology for any step in their criminal intention and criminal activity. especially during the recruiting victim and advertising on their services. Training has been done together with the EU Agency for Law Enforcement Training, also known as the CEPOL. We have hosted with them a series of webinars to anticipate the impact of the Ukrainian conflict on the work of EU law enforcement officials, and also to raise awareness on the challenges and the risks generated by the current crisis.
Mr. Nacho, thanks so much for this. If you could quickly wrap up, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Sorry to press you.
Yes, with the deployments, I'm already at the end.
Thanks.
What I need to say is that deployments are aiming to connect information from the frontline officers with the other investigations that could be ongoing already or that are going to be in the future. And of course, about the cooperation with the private sector, we have done a lot. Can we do more? Yes, it's always possible to do more. We need to be sure that the private sector is aware of the risk of trafficking human beings, to contribute to awareness raising, especially in the high-risk sectors such as agriculture, constructions, hospitality, cleaning, care, domestic work. Together with the NGOs, I think we can achieve a lot and we can be more successful than we are at this moment, even though the reaction is quite satisfying. Thank you very much, and I hope that I managed to be in the time frame.
Thank you so much for your intervention, and thanks to all the participants. I think I have to quickly wrap up, but thanks to all. You have the website for further information also, and thanks again to all the speakers. But I see we have a distinguished visitor. I pass over to Natalia. Thank you.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, we have a great surprise today. We have Madam Yulia Tymoshenko, a prominent Ukrainian politician, Prime Minister of Ukraine. Now there is no X, you know, if you become a Prime Minister, if you have a public support. Now, lead of the opposition of Ukraine. Very honestly, I do apologize for this mess. We haven't expected her, at least me, was not aware that he's going to visit our hub, but this is a great honor for us. So, if you allow me for just a couple of minutes, I have the floor to Madam Yulia Tymoshenko.
Я дякую, дуже чесно вам скажу, це абсолютна випадковість. Ми зайшли, нам порадили подивитися прекрасну інсталяцію, яка є у вас тут, з України, де ми побачили частину Київської області, там, такі дуже для нас, такі знакові речі. Ми зайшли подивитись інсталяцію, я дуже дякую, що мене просто, випадково тут побачили і запросили. Це не планувалось абсолютно.
So, dear ladies and gentlemen, it was not pre-planned. We were just invited to visit a beautiful installation and a poster with a part of Kiev destroyed. And we wanted just to have a look at it, and it was absolutely unexpected to join any kind of event for us.
Thank you for invitation.
Thank you for your invitation. That's for us. But we are greatly honored to have you here. Ми дуже вдячні вам за те, що ви до нас завітали.
Я хотіла би просто повідомити вам,
I would like just to tell you that
що ми перший раз зараз з нашою командою виїхали з України.
That we are first time with our team out of Ukraine from the starting of the war.
І приїхали ми сюди з однією метою.
And we have only one goal that we came with.
Щоб це прекрасне об'єднання всього західного вільного світу
навколо української біди. Joined in effort community of Europe in order to help Ukraine.
Зосередилися на збереженні мети перемоги в Україні всіми силами вільного світу. І ні в якому випадку не звернули на шлях знаходження порозуміння і збереження обличчя Путіну. Тому що сьогодні дві такі концепції в світі, на жаль, існують.
So the goal of our visit is that the European community stands in Ukraine, side by side, in order to help us to overcome this war and to be successful and to help Ukraine in each and every mean, and not to allow Mr. Putin to save his face and his appearance, and to make a kind of new collaboration.
Сьогодні я хочу, щоб ви знали, тому що я, по суті, з тієї лінії фронту, що у України разом з усім світом є всі абсолютно можливості не просто перемогти, а розгромити цю чорну силу раз і назавжди. Це історичний момент зараз.
I am now, Madam Tymoshenko, I am now from the other part of the border, from the opposite part. And from the opposite part of the border, I have the honor to inform you that Ukraine has all forces and means to destroy this black enemy. And in order to prevent any kind of discrimination in the world, Ukraine has each and every opportunity to win now.
І хочу сказати, що багато задають питання, а як закінчити цю війну? Як закінчити так, щоб дійсно країна-агресор зупинилася?
And Madam Tymoshenko receives a lot of questions. How to end this war? How to do in that way that the country aggressor stops?
Да, і якраз важливо знати, що якщо Росія, країна-агресор, отримають розгром на фронті, це буде кінець режиму Путіна. І це буде кінець війни. І це буде кінець криз на європейському континенті.
And so the answer is very simple. In case Ukraine wins in the war, what we have, yes, in case we have the opportunity to destroy absolutely till the end the Russian army, that will be the end of the war. And that will be the end of aggression. And this will be the beginning of the peace on the European continent.
І це буде розгром режиму Путіна.
And this will be the end of Putin's regime in Russia, because they never
це буде кінцем війни.
And this will be the end of war.
А після того, щоб на європейському континенті вже не було війни, треба просто прийняти до НАТО і до Європейського Союзу Україну, Грузію, Молдову, країни колишньої Югославії. Нам треба зробити Європу однією родиною і однією системою безпеки.
And then, in order to ensure the safety and security on the European continent, Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and former Yugoslav republics, I do apologize for saying in that way, should join NATO and the European Union. And this will ensure peace and security on the European continent.
Ну і подбати про те, щоб режим Путіна змінився на більш адекватну історію.
And we badly need your help in order to ensure that Putin's regime is changed with adequate, and democratic order.
Democratic in Russia impossible.
Okay, more adequate order. More adequate order.
More adequate, yeah.
Sorry for my bad English. I apologize.
Я просто хочу сказати, що у вас прекрасна англійська. Зараз ключова річ, щоб динаміка спільної боротьби проти Кремля не уповільнилась, а навпаки багатократно посилилася. Це зараз дуже важлива точка.
Today we have the key point that the dynamic of countering Kremlin's issues and attempts against European solidarity, democracy and all democratic rights are increasing, not decreasing. And this is the key point for today.
І те, що відбувається зараз в Україні, разом об'єднавшися з країнами вільного світу, з народами вільного світу, ми сьогодні будемо міняти порядки і правила в світі так, як більш зручно людству. Це дуже важливо.
And today, Ukraine has a role to change order and established perceptions in order to make it more humanic, more in order to democratic path better for all people. And Ukraine is now very much eager to change this world order in order to please people.
Разом з вільним світом.
And together, and we would like to do it together with the whole world community.
І тому, закінчуючи, я хочу сказати, що я дуже вірю в Україну, дуже вірю в ту найкращу частину людства, яка стоїть сьогодні на стороні світла, на стороні добра і миру.
And to wrap up, I would like to say that I strongly believe into that part of humanity that stands on the side of light, on the side of humans, of humanity, of world order.
Ми всі з вами зробимо свою історичну справу.
And we all together will do our historic role.
Слава Україні!
Glory to Ukraine!
І хочу також поділитися гарною новиною. Російський корабль нарешті пішов туди, куди його посилали. Все в порядку.
And the great news is the Russian warship actually sank today what it was sent by the very simple Ukrainian sailor and border guard from Zmyny.
Thank you за увагу. Дякую. До побачення.
Ladies and gentlemen, could I ask you just I would like just to thank everyone for being here today. Well, it's not nothing to tell in microphone. I just would like to thank you all for being here today, for choosing these premises to have this very, very important conference. And we have some conclusions that everyone can get noted, and we will publish it on our webpage not to make you wait anymore. Just thanks a million for coming today, for presenting your ideas, and I hope that our cooperation will go on. Thank you.